Hello friends, welcome to CEC live lectures. I am Dr. Pavitra Bharadwaj. I work as an associate professor in the Department of Computer Science at Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi. So friends, in this series of lectures we are talking about JavaScript and how JavaScript can be used to make very rich, robust web pages which are responsive, which articulate, which interact, which animate with the user. So in this lecture we will continue with our discussion that was part of the previous lecture, that is we were talking about event driven programming or how events are handled in case of JavaScript. So we had said that whenever the user interacts with any of the items or any of the elements on the page, an event occurs. Even when you open a web page or a document loads, that is also an event. When you close the page, that is another event. So whatever the user does on the page with the different elements, everything results into an event. And then for that event to occur and that event to be handled, we define some kind of event handler. So event handler is that code which will be executed once that event is going to occur. So if say for example you define some code for on the click of a button, so as soon as the button will be clicked by the user, that event will be occurring, and the event handler, whatever function we have defined for handling to take place when the button is clicked, that is going to be defined by the event handler. So basically we have seen that when events occur, there are step by step procedure which is going to follow, right. So whenever the user interacts, an action takes place on the screen, an event is sensed, an event is detected, and then the JavaScript document object model is triggered and it tries to sense where exactly on which object the event has occurred, and then finally the action whatever the user has specified is going to take place. So the action is sensed as an event and JavaScript handles this event with an event handler, and when the document object model is used, so the object can be located and the reaction to that event is performed as toggling the source image to another one. In this case so depending upon the event handler functions are described, right. So what is actually event handling? Event handling means the capacity of the language to capture event and to respond to them, right. So the system will send the event to the program and the program will respond to them as they arrive, right. So anything which the user is doing, like clicking of a mouse, or uploading a picture or updating the clock or closing a particular thing, everything is going to be an event, right. So what are event driven programs? So the programs which will capture and respond to the event are called event driven programs, right. So JavaScript is basically designed, is very specially designed for writing such kind of programs. So almost all programs which are written in JavaScript are event driven, right, because JavaScript, we are using JavaScript to make our page responsive. Responsive means that whenever an action is performed by the user, that action will generate some kind of response from the web page. So this action which is performed by the user is termed as an event basically, right. So event handlers, whenever we are using event handlers, we understand that they are always a part of the HTML tag, that is they are always a part of the body element, right. Whereas we have seen that JavaScript that we have used, that JavaScript we were using in the head portion, right. So event handlers, they will be placed in the body part of a web page as attributes in the HTML, right. Now events can be captured and responded to directly with JavaScript one-liners which will be embedded within the HTML tags in the body portion. So events can be captured in HTML code also, and then they will be directed to JavaScript function for an appropriate response. So there are multiple ways in which we can capture the event and how we will call the code call the program which is this, designated for handling that particular event. Like for example, this this example here, what we are doing is that we are checking that the from text box should not be empty, right. So, as soon as the user clicks on the field or clicks on the button send email, it is going to check whether the from text box or the from field is empty or not. So, what is here? The clicking of the send email box or the clicking of the send email button is the event, and the code which is going to check whether the from text box is empty or not is the event handler. So, how do we define this? It is very important. So, we basically we have a very simple button for this. So, we use the input type submit button, okay. We give a name to the button and a value to the button, and for the button we describe or we define the event on mouse over. So, even before the user clicks, even only when the user rolls the mouse or hovers the mouse over the button, it will check. Now, how it is going to check? So, when we define an event, so we are giving an equal to sign, and within quotes we are defining the code, right. So, we are giving the one line of code as a part of the event handler within the HTML tag itself. So, here we are checking that if document dot send email. Now, send email is the name of the submit button that we are using, dot sender dot value dot length. So, these are the methods that we are using to fetch the value of the email of the button, whatever the field has been chosen, okay. If it is less than 1, then we are going to give a one line command, and that is a message will be alerted to the user that the field cannot be blank, that is it. So, it is a one line of code which we have actually inserted within our HTML tag to become the event handler, right. Likewise, we can also have inline event handlers, right. So, inline event handlers can also be, they are also placed in the body portion of a web page like attributes of the HTML tag, right. So, the event handler attribute consists of 3 parts. Whenever you are having an event handler, you are defining an event handler, it should have 3 parts you need to define. The first part is the identifier of the event handler. What is the identifier? The text which is going to identify the event has occurred, like on click or on mouse. Then you have an equal to sign, and then within quotes, because it is a string. So, a string consisting of JavaScript statements which will be used or which will be used for that kind of handling of the event. Now, multiple JavaScript statements which can also be used, that can also be placed by separating with them the semicolon, right, but all need to be fitting into a single line. No new line characters are allowed in that particular string. It has to come in a single line, but multiple statements can be separated using a semicolon. So, due to this limitation, sophisticated event handling is not possible with inline event handling, because you cannot have any new line character. So, these are very basic event handling functions that we write using inline JavaScript. But there are also more sophisticated ways of defining functions and defining event handlers, that also we will look. So, how do you use this? So, this is simple, as we just seen, that within that code or within that HTML you can define it. If you want to make it more sophisticated, if you want to make it more complex, then we have another way of doing it. Now, in this case what you do is that you define a function, right. We are defining a function, say for example, we are defining a function check form, and in that function we are going to check the value, like we checked in that place we checked it within the HTML tag. Here we are going to check it separately in the form of a function. So, here we have defined a function check form, and within that function we are just checking that if the value of the length is less than 1, then it is going to alert. And where are you going to call this? Now instead of defining the whole thing in the event handler, we are only calling the function. So in the input type, on mouse over event equals to, you simply call the function. So whenever the mouse will move over, the function will be called. So in this case, now we can have more number of lines also, because you are defining the event handler in the form of a separate function. You are not defining it as an inline function or inline event handler within the HTML tag. So there are a number of events which are there, and event handlers are written for multiple events, right, but very common and actually most common ones are written here. So you have on click, double click, mouse over, mouse down, on focus, on blur, reset, and on load and on unload. So other events are all similar. The two events which are different here are on load and on unload, because all other events will be they are related to, or they are referenced through any particular kind of element, but on load and on unload, these are basically related to, or these are basically the events of the window element itself, of the main window object itself. So these two events are different from the rest of the events. Like for example, this is another example where we are checking the age of the person. So the person is asked to put the age in a text box, and then we define whether the age is less than or more than 12, right. So whenever this is how we are doing this, again we are using the function here, right. So we will define the JavaScript in the script tags, right, in the head portion. So we will write the function there for checking age, and here we are using the parse int function, because as we know that in the text box, whatever an input the user is giving is going to be a text input. So we will use the parse input function, parse int function, to convert that text into a number, and then we compare it with 12. So if the age or the value which is given by the user is less than 12, then a window alert method is used to show a message to the user. And where are you going to call this function? Again we are going to call this function in the text box, and the event on which it is being called is on blur. On blur means that whenever the focus is moved out of that text box, this function will be called. And if you see that in this function, it's no arguments are given here, because within the function it is directly accessing the text box, right. So form 1 is the name of the form, and age is the name of the text box. So we are specifying that the text box age which belongs to form 1, which belongs to the document, the value has to be read from there. So in this case no argument need to be passed, the form is directly referenced by the name, the text box is directly referenced by its name. So this way we can have event handlers defined for for different input elements in the form of functions, in a more sophisticated, in a more clearer format, right. So we have this on blur event, right. So in on blur event we are checking when the focus is moving out of the text box, right. So that is the on blur event which is occurring. Then we can have other types of functions also, like we can have on focus function. Say for example, if you have a text box and you want to change the color of the text box when the focus is coming on the text box, right. So that can also be easily done. In that case you will use the on focus event. So in on focus event, what will you do? You will you will define the change of the background color of the text box when the focus is being shifted to that particular text box. So this way we can define different events, and we can call the different event handler functions at the wherever you are defining the event on that HTML element. It is the more sophisticated manner, and it is better manner in which you call the event handler in the form of a function instead of defining it as an inline function or an inline event handler within the HTML tag itself, right. So, as we had seen, that two events require a special mention here. The two events are the onLoad function and onUnload function, right. So, on load and onUnload function, they execute when a new document is loaded or when the user exits a document, right. So, these are very important because the rest of the functions, they belong to the individual elements, but onLoad and onUnload function, they belong to the entire document, that is the document which is the highest in the hierarchy in the document object model, right. So, in this case what we are doing, whenever the user is trying to close the page, it is going to give a message to the user. So, whenever an onUnload event is occurring, the function will be called. So, this will be defined because this function belongs to the document structure, the entire document. So, we are going to call the event handler and we define this event in the body. So, this particular event belongs to the body and not to any other individual element or button or text box, etc. So, in the body we will call a function, say we have defined a function annoy user, and we will call this function on unload event which is occurring, and you can give a message to the user. Likewise, on load also we can give a message to the user, right. So, on load and on unload is very interesting, and a lot of interesting programming can be done. Say for example, whenever a user is exiting your page, so on unload event is occurring, so we can give a message to the user, right. At times the user will open multiple interdependent windows of a website, right. So, in that case also we can always warn the user that the child windows will become inoperable and the user has to close the parent window. So, therefore, this kind of event handling can add a lot of activity to our web page, and a lot of user interest can be added to our web page when you are using this kind of event driven and event handling programming. But of course, we have seen that although JavaScript is very robust, but there are always cross browser compatibility issues that one comes across when you are using the JavaScript, right. So, JavaScript also provides us with another very important and very interesting functionality which is rather recently added, right, that is called as the jQuery. Right. Now, jQuery, it allows us like cross browser compatibility. It also has quick and easy access to the HTML and DOM manipulation. We have just seen that whenever there is an event occurring, whenever there is a change in the document object model, then we have to define functions, and these functions will then give some kind of an output, right. So, in case of jQuery, we will have specifically we will use the CSS and we will use the JavaScript to control the events, right. So, there are very powerful tools which are available in jQuery which will create professional effects and animations, right, and we will have functions for conducting asynchronous communication with the web server also, right. So, jQuery is actually becoming the real buzzword now. It is the base for a wide range of plugins and a number of utilities which are being used, and a tremendous number of websites, the latest websites, they are all using jQuery. So, actually what is jQuery? jQuery is nothing but a lightweight write less do more library. It is a JavaScript library, okay, and it makes our page very easy. It makes using JavaScript on the website very easy, because it provides a lot of ready-made functions. It has it provides a lot of single lines of code. You can directly use those lines of code to perform a lot of common tasks, for which earlier multiple JavaScript lines of code was required. So, it also simplifies a lot of the complicated tasks from JavaScript, like we had AJAX calls or we have DOM manipulation. So, all these things are taken care of when you have the jQuery integrated within your page. So, instead of now writing long functions or multiple lines of code, the user can simply use one single line, the programmer or the web designer can simply use one single line of code which comes from jQuery and accomplish whatever was done earlier using multiple lines, right. So, jQuery library actually it's a library, it's a JavaScript file you can say, and it contains HTML and DOM manipulation features, it contains CSS manipulation features, it will provide HTML event methods, all the event handlers that we have discussed. It also have functionality related to effects and animations. Then you have the AJAX and the utilities in jQuery which are there. So, there is a plugin for almost any task which you would want to accomplish, which is provided by the jQuery. So, jQuery is, there are multiple libraries which are used in JavaScript, there are lots of libraries which are used, but jQuery has become the most popular and it has become the most extendable. It is being very commonly used by big companies like Google or Microsoft, IBM, Netflix, and multiple other big giants are using the jQuery features and jQuery functions into their web pages to make the web pages more robust and more rich that way, right. So, how do you add jQuery to your web page? So, because we are saying that jQuery is nothing but a library. So, this library can be simply downloaded from the jQuery library, okay, the jQuery.com, or you can include the jQuery from a CDN like the Google. So, there are two ways. One is that we download the jQuery file and we store it on our computer. Another is that you use it in the form of a link which you can insert from any CDN like the Google also. So, how do you download it? So, there are multiple versions which are available of jQuery for downloading, right. So, we have the production version which is used for live websites, okay, because it is minified, it is the compressed version. Then we have the development version, this is used for testing and development. So, this is readable code, uncompressed files are there, and both the functions are available at the jQuery.com, both the versions can be downloaded from there. So, initially when a programmer starts or when a web designer starts working, they should use on the development version and then they can move on to the production versions once they are comfortable using the environment provided by the jQuery. So, it is actually a single JavaScript file and then you can reference that file in your HTML page using the script tag, okay. So, like in our script where we were using script and closing script to insert all JavaScript, now we will use script source is equal to and we will give the path of the JavaScript file of the jQuery file, the jQuery library. Now, it is also very important to understand that wherever we are placing our jQuery files, wherever we wish to put all the jQuery files, this library file also has to be in the same directory, in the same folder. Only then it is going to be readable by the files that you are going to apply the jQuery functions to. So, whenever you are downloading, you will keep in mind that you put the jQuery file in that same directory and all the files which are accessing the library are also in the same directory. So, after looking at this, after working on jQuery, JavaScript becomes even more interesting and it becomes even more user friendly for the programmers and the web designers. We will be continuing with our discussion on jQuery in the following lectures. Till then, please keep watching CEC. Thank you.